Out on the open sea, the necessity to keep workers, sailors, and fishermen safe demanded the creation of the raincoat. A need for visibility and a durable, waterproof material led to the creation of the standard yellow color. When the raincoat was created in 1824, it immediately developed a reputation of safety and protection. Today, that reputation could not be more different. There's an impressively large number of characters in horror or thriller projects that wear yellow raincoats. Most, if not all of these characters, go through extreme trauma in the movie, show, book, or game that they're a part of. And frequently, the addition of the yellow raincoat is both related to the history of the garment and the personality of the character. Starting at the most recognizable, Georgie. Georgie Denborough from Stephen King's 1986 novel, 1990 miniseries, and 2017 movie is probably the character most associated with the yellow raincoat. The story begins with Georgie chasing a paper boat down the street while it rains. He's wearing a bright coat and stands out against the gloomy, rainy sky. The boat washes down the storm drain, and his attempt to retrieve it leads him to meet Pennywise. Pennywise promptly bites Georgie's arm off, and in the book, he bleeds to death in the rain, and in the movie, he gets pulled into the sewer and eaten. So in that first example, we already have the three main qualities of the yellow raincoat. It's a yellow raincoat, it's a stark contrast to the outside world, and it signifies the death of innocence. Stephen King putting Georgie, a child, in a child-associated garment that is a youthful and happy color fits with his subversion of innocent figures in his works. Pet Sematary subverted the innocent reputation of cats, Children of the Corn, kids, Cujo, dogs, Carrie, the shy teenager, even It with clowns. So it's not crazy to assume that his use of a childish coat with a vibrant and lively color was used in order to taint an innocent object. It is often viewed as the property that cemented raincoats in the Horror Hall of Fame. But two movies came out a decade earlier that may have been the real start to the raincoat of horror. And they are 1973's Don't Look Now and 1976's Alice, Sweet Alice. Don't Look Now follows husband and wife John and Laura Baxter through their journey of grief and denial surrounding the accidental death of their young daughter Christine. Laura has a conversation with an apparent psychic who claims to see their daughter.
I've seen your little girl, and she was laughing. Yes, my sister's psychic.
They begin seeing a child in a red raincoat, the clothing item that Christine was wearing when she died, and John begins to hesitantly grow hope that his daughter is somehow alive. Laura's conversations with the psychic convince her that danger is near. But John disregards this, follows the figure through the city, and when it turns around, it's revealed to be an adult female little person who promptly stabs John in the neck with a meat cleaver. So in this film, the raincoat shares similarities and differences with it. The first similarity is obviously that because it's a raincoat, the movie is highly associated with rain and water. Water is meant to be cleansing, but throughout the movie, victims of the serial killer are being pulled out of canals, shots linger on water reflections, and Christine herself died of drowning. This separation of cleansing water and sinister water mimics the juxtaposition present in all of these stories. Childlike characters in childlike apparel contrast violent and traumatic situations, and Christine's death is an intentional addition to this water theme, because in the book, she dies of meningitis, but it was changed in the movie to fit with the desired theme. The difference between the raincoat in this movie and the one in It is pretty obvious. One is yellow, one is red. In Don't Look Now, the color is meant to signify a warning of danger, as well as a foreshadowing to the bloody death at the end. Alice, Sweet Alice makes a change that gets us closer to the iconic look. In this movie, the 12-year-old titular Alice is accused of murdering her younger sister. She's sent to a psychiatric hospital, but the murders continue. We see that the murders are being carried out by a figure in a mask and a yellow raincoat. The murderer is eventually revealed to be Miss Trudoni, and her motive was a desire to punish sinners. So this movie again hits the three necessities. It's one of the first widely popular gothic horror movies with a yellow raincoat. The fact that the killer is wearing a mask hints at the performative nature and differentiates her from the rest of the regular-looking people. And the death of her sister and Alice being ostracized by her parents signifies the death of innocence. The yellow raincoat can exist in more childish media, but it doesn't lose its traumatic association. Prime example, Coraline. In the Neil Gaiman book, her coat is blue. Henry Selick, the director of the 2009 movie, addressed the change in an interview with Esquire. He stated his awareness of the usage of yellow raincoats in the gothic genre, but claimed his use of it in his film was not to fit with this trope. He simply wanted Coraline and her vibrant coat to stand out in a muted, gray world.
Put them back. But Mom, the whole school's gonna wear boring gray clothes. No one will have these.
Her design makes her seem to fit better in the other world, and allows the audience to further understand her attraction to it.
It's part of who we are, kids. Scary stories for kids. It's ancient. It's sort of probably someone was warning the kids, well, don't go near that cave. There's a bear that might eat you. And whoever was the best one at warning the kids became storytellers.
She too undergoes serious trauma throughout the entire movie, really. At the beginning, she feels ignored and sometimes outright disliked by her parents. She meets the perfect family, and then that's ripped away from her when the other mother tries to sew buttons into her eyes and then kill her. So yellow jacket, stark contrast, destroyed innocence. Check, check, check. But of course, the majority of the Yellow Raincoat's appearances are in darker stories. In Wonder Egg Priority, I wears a yellow raincoat. She has become sort of a recluse after her friend's suicide. This traumatic death leads her to lose her innocent view of the world, and her reaction of shutting herself away from other people draws attention to the contrast between her and the outside world. There's a similar situation in the video game Little Nightmares. 6 wears a yellow raincoat, contrasting her bright appearance with the dark outside world, but also signifying the ambiguous violence she will both commit and overcome. In Dark, one of the first shots that we see is Jonas riding his bike, and you guessed it, a yellow raincoat. His coat is definitely an iconic part of his wardrobe, and the show knows it. First of all, Dark is set in the small, gloomy town of Winden. Jonas wearing a bright yellow raincoat sets him apart from the rest of the town. This separation signifies his importance in the circular time loop. Jonas wearing the raincoat also signifies his trauma. In the first season of the show, he's dealing with his father's unexplained suicide. And as the show goes on, he comes face to face with his morally ambiguous future decisions. And in terms of the show knowing the significance of the coat, when we switch over to an alternate universe where Martha is the protagonist living in Jonas's house and experiencing her own trauma, she wears the yellow raincoat. Even Goonies, a movie that came out 5 years before the It miniseries, had Mikey in a yellow raincoat while looking for a treasure and being chased by criminals. He has multiple near-death experiences, and he has lost a portion of his innocence while coming to terms with being forced to move away from his childhood friends.
Why don't we go home? Home? What home? In a couple more hours, it ain't gonna be home anymore.
And is it a coincidence that he loses his yellow raincoat halfway through the movie and ends up surviving till the end? Probably, but it's still interesting. Even in stories where the yellow raincoat is just a throwaway wardrobe piece and not an iconic piece of the character, it still follows the theme of trauma and loss of innocence. In Stranger Things Season 3, Max and Eleven break into Heather Holloway's home to investigate her disappearance. When the door bursts open, we see Eleven in a red raincoat and Max in a yellow one. In this episode, her brother ends up being involved in some unexplained sinister activities related to the Mind Flayer. And his death at the end of the season begins Max's mental health decline, and her eventually emotionally and physically traumatic fate at the end of Season 4. In Harriet the Spy, Harriet wears a yellow raincoat. This movie's not outwardly violent, but the scene of her journal being discovered and leading to her being mocked and alienated by her classmates fits into the standing out against the backdrop of the world and other people in it theme.
Janie really creeps me out. I wonder if she'll grow up to be a total nutcase?
Singin' in the Rain is an incredibly light and uplifting movie, but the chorus girls in raincoats hint to a darker reality, explored in Babylon, a movie that chronicled the exploitation of film industry workers in the early 20th century.
What do you think? You're asking me what I think?
Okay.
Yeah.
This looks much better.
I think you got those cameras pointed in the wrong direction.
We do the rainbow, remember?
More recently, in 2021's The Black Phone, Gwen wears a yellow raincoat while riding on her bike. This is definitely an homage to It, proven by the fact that the short story that The Black Phone was based on was written by Stephen King's son, Joe Hill. But even outside of homages, within the story, Gwen still fits the qualifications. She's being abused by her father, and she's a significant member of the world meant to stand out through her wardrobe. Joe Hill actually wrote a comic book series called Basketful of Heads, whose protagonist wears a yellow raincoat. This story explores the corruption and rot that exists under the surface of a small town, a theme that continues with the protagonist, June, hiding under an innocuous childlike disguise. 1985's Friday the 13th, A New Beginning, sets the tone right off the bat, by opening with a dream sequence of Tommy Jarvis in a yellow raincoat watching gravediggers retrieving Jason's corpse before he charges him. Even in projects where the coat is worn by a minor side character, it still relates to the theme. Sean Brody in Jaws Revenge and Dennis Nedry in Jurassic Park are both wearing yellow raincoats during their violent death scenes.
Stick, stupid. That's a stick, boy. Yes. You like a stick? Go on, get it. And no wonder you're extinct.
In The Perfect Storm, Bobby Shatford has hopes for a happy future with his girlfriend, until he puts on the yellow raincoat, then perishes when the storm hits the Andrea Gale. Many of the projects listed so far have featured protagonists wearing the yellow raincoat, but there's a myriad of examples that actually have the villain adorned in the lighthearted shade. 1998's Milo follows the antagonist, Milo, an evil child with a predisposition to violence because of the experimentation that led to his creation. After he murders a girl his age, his creator locks him away and fakes his death by drowning. There's another association between the yellow raincoat characters and the supposedly cleansing motif of water.
Here's your water.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, ma'am.
I mean, ma'am.
Is it supposed to be water? It's wet, ain't it? Drink it!
Du solltest nicht so lange im Regen stehen.
Warum?
Na, weil der sauer ist. Tschernobyl? Die Leute sagen zwar, da ist nichts mehr im Regen, aber das glaube ich nicht.
Take care of that throat. You're a big singing star now, remember? This California dew is just a little heavier than usual tonight.
Really? From where I stand, the sun is shining all over the place.
What are you doing in the sewer?
The storm blew me away. Blew the whole circus away.
I think it's about to rain, Mrs. Faulkner. Yes.
It was dark, it was raining. He attacked my husband as soon as he got in the car.
What was he wearing?
Raincoat, a sort of oilskin, the kind that fishermen wear, and a hat the same material.
And if I'm a water witch, then where's the secret well?
The 2006 video game Dead Rising featured the True Eye cult. This game takes place during a zombie apocalypse, and the cult sees the zombie outbreak as a cleansing event.
If we are to achieve salvation, his blood must flow!
They're a violent group, and of course, they all wear yellow raincoats. Wearing a garment designed for rain indoors already paints them as strange. The yellow color of the raincoats makes them stand out from the zombies, as well as hint to them being antagonists with different goals. Wearing a coat built for protection against the elements could also reflect the cult's desire to cleanse the world of non-believers. The childish nature of their outfits contrasts their violent actions, and the fact that they're all wearing the exact same thing highlights their cult mentality. In Creepshow 2, our morally gray anti-hero, Annie, is haunted by a hitchhiker that she killed in a hit-and-run. He wears a yellow raincoat in a contrast between innocence and violence. That's not even the only horror project centered around a yellow raincoat-wearing hitchhiker. In a 1980 episode of Hammer House of Horror called Two Faces of Evil, a family invites a hitchhiker into their car, who promptly attacks the driver, Martin. Martin begins to act strangely, and his wife, Janet, assumes he's been infiltrated by a supernatural, malevolent entity.
Say that your husband was discharged and was delivered to your home.
Wasn't Martin?
In this project, the raincoat is used to obscure the hitchhiker's face, possibly foreshadowing the ambiguous ending about her husband's possible possession. In Last Action Hero, the Rooftop Ripper is wearing a yellow raincoat. The Mr. Mischief dolls have yellow raincoats. They're not explicitly horror creatures, but they freak me out. So the next question is, of course, why is this?
What does a yellow light mean?
Slow down.
Okay. What?
There's a ton of reasons. First, the history. Raincoats were invented in Glasgow in 1823 by Scottish chemist Charles Mackintosh to protect sailors and fishermen working in rainy weather. The original raincoat, the Mackintosh, was named after him. The color arose from both visibility and practicality. Yellow is a very visible color, and one that can be easily seen during a storm. The color was assumed to be the best to identify people on the dock and boat and people who fell overboard. In terms of practicality, early raincoats were made of canvas and covered with linseed oil to make them waterproof. This oil had a yellow tint that made the garments yellow. Eventually, the color became synonymous with the coat, and they were intentionally dyed yellow. Since raincoats are so historically linked with the color yellow, if you're a director and you want to distinguish that a character is wearing a raincoat instead of a regular coat, making it yellow makes it more clear. The second reason is our cultural association with warning. Early traffic signals for trains were gaslit and used green to mean go and red to mean stop. Very clear symbols with very clear and distinct colors. Later, when the traffic signals were made electric, yellow was added as a midpoint warning color. Not quite stop, not quite go, adding to the ambiguity and juxtaposition, and setting in a gray area where the danger could be transformative or deadly. In Don't Look Now, Christine's coat is red, and John's grief clouds him from seeing the signal as what it clearly is, the color of danger, and he follows it to his demise. We even see this type of warning in nature. Yellow jackets are colored yellow as a warning to predators about their aggressive nature. Bright colors in nature like yellow, green, and red can indicate the toxicity or hostility of an animal. Clearly, this association of warning has carried into the horror genre. The third reason for the yellow color is related to another association with yellow: happiness. Outside of traffic stops and poisonous bugs, yellow is often considered the color of joy. The sun, dandelions, smiley faces, summer lemonade stands, they're all yellow. It represents a beacon or optimism. So having it be worn by a character that goes through trauma or meets a violent end can be seen as evil snuffing out optimism, and explains its usage in horror. Fourth, yellow is associated with change.
People just change, okay? That's it. I've changed. It's that simple.
The color of the leaves changing, the sunrise, and new spring flowers make us associate this color with some sort of transition or rebirth. So when a character wears this color, it can signify that we're meeting a person who is about to go through significant changes. Fifth, the most popular colors of children's raincoats in the 1980s and 90s were yellow and red. These colors were chosen because of their visibility. Small children running through the rain need to wear a color that makes them stand out to drivers and their parents. Yellow ended up becoming the iconic default color because of its association to fishermen and its ability to bring cheerfulness to a gloomy landscape. And lastly, a raincoat just fits with the atmosphere of horror projects. How many horror books start with a dark and stormy night?
It was a dark and stormy night like this one.
It isn't that stormy.
Dark and stormy nights leave lots of possibilities for imaginative storytelling. The power can go out, leaving the protagonist at a disadvantage in the dark.
Oh my, there goes the electricity. What do we do now?
Driving conditions can be difficult, making escape attempts more exhilarating.
I can hardly see a thing.
And people can wear raincoats.
I think it's about to rain, Mrs. Faulkner.
Explaining the association between horror and raincoats. It's kind of like Pavlov's dogs. You start with an initial fear of the sea that gets associated to fishermen and raincoats. Horror stories are set in the rain and characters are dressed in raincoats, and eventually the source, the fear of the ocean, is taken away, but the result, characters in raincoats, stays. And with the increasing number of projects with characters in yellow raincoats, we're left with sort of a foggy association between raincoats and horror, and we don't know why. It's wild to see how this garment that originated as a means of protection amalgamated into an icon of violence, but it's not uncommon. A number of innocent objects are made sinister simply for the shock factor. I remember learning that a survival instinct exists for sounds. Animals associate high-pitched sounds with infants crying, activating a maternal response. And they associate low-pitched sounds with growling predators, activating a fear response. So in horror movies, the sound mixers will play a high-pitched sound and a low-pitched sound at the same time. It sort of overwhelms your brain as your instincts can't tell if it should be calm and helpful or terrified. This anxious feeling exists in the yellow raincoat of horror. Most people have happy childhood memories of splashing in puddles and playing in the rain, so seeing a representation of that joy be in so many dark, scary, and gory projects can be alarming. So the takeaway from this is that from one inclusion in one story, the reputation of an object can be altered forever, and continually re-solidified by future projects. And when in doubt, remember, yellow raincoats, safe for fishermen, deadly for protagonists.
It was dark, it was raining.
What was he wearing?
Raincoat.
But Mom, the whole school is gonna wear boring gray clothes. No one will have these.
I think it's about to rain, Mrs. Faulkner.